Public CEO Report is a podcast that provides insights about the public sector and public policy for the benefit of decision makers and leaders powering our communities.
I'm your host, Ryder Todd Smith, and today we're joined by Sunil Rajaraman, founder of Hamlet, a startup redefining how residents and businesses interact with local government using artificial intelligence, the big buzzword of the day. Sunil, welcome to the Public CEO Report.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be a guest.
All right. Well, first of all, congratulations on being an AI. It's everybody and their cousins talking about AI these days. That's exciting stuff. So I'm really excited to have you on. A couple of notes for our audience too. You and I know each other personally. We've known each other for a bit. We were connected by a mutual friend from Claremont McKenna College, but you and I both went to CMC. You're a couple years younger than me, though. What class were you at CMC?
I was 2001, if memory serves, but I like to say 2008 if I can, if no one's keeping track.
That's fair. So you're about 5 years behind me, which means I'm 5 years older than you. And then through kind of our conversations together and whatnot, the evolution of your firm, you asked me to join your firm as an advisor to help you kind of navigate the local government world, which is, as you've come to realize, and I've known for a while, is certainly esoteric in its own right. So I do, full disclosure to the audience, have some financial interest in the success of Hamlet, but I'm also personally invested just in our friendship together. And I was really excited to have this conversation because having seen the popularity of AI as a subject in local government lately, you seem like a great guy to bring on and have a conversation about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm grateful for your involvement with Hamlet, but I'm also excited to talk about AI and demystify anything because there's a lot of misinformation about AI out there. So I'd like to talk about that as well.
Well, and all the more for you to be trustworthy because you have on the obligatory Bay Area hoodie. So it just means your street cred is even more through the roof as a result. So can you elaborate a little bit on how you're using AI to achieve that? I mean, that's kind of the unique thing is what's the AI aspect here and what kind of data are you running through?
AI, what it's done is it's just given everyone the ability to process vast amount of information much more quickly. And so if you think about, let's just say like the last 20 years, all of us have used Google search, and the way we interact with Google search is we type in something that we want maybe, and we get, 10 blue linked ads to buy that thing. And then all of a sudden you see a result. That is the way we've become used to life. And no knock on Google, it's obviously an amazing product. But what AI has done is it's given us the ability to ask natural language questions. And I think that was the big moment for a lot of people. Their first experience with AI was ChatGPT. But if I just wanted to ask, who was a city council member in 2016 in Orinda, it's possible to ask that in a natural way. However, the problem is AI is only as good as the data it processes. So in the case of public information, some of that information is in videos, it is in PDFs, and you have to feed the AI and effectively tune the AI to know the answers to that information. But the base models, the large language models, have given us a new experience with information, which is to interact in a natural language sort of way. And that's the real revolution of AI, in my opinion.
It strikes me, at least what I've seen, is that there might be a consistent few large language models out there that are powering AI solutions today, but it's the middle layer of refining those to focus on particular niche markets or deliverables where the key advantage is, the key differentiator is between just going to, say Bing Copilot or whatever they call it on the Microsoft search tool, which is effectively powered by OpenAI, and asking it some questions versus what might perceive as that Hamlet tool that's like, well, we're going to take that and really educate it around this area of local government. That's my understanding. Is that a fair understanding?
That's a fair understanding. It's these large language models that exist today. OpenAI is GPT-4. Anthropic is another big one. There's open source ones like Facebook, and we'll get into all that, I'm sure, later. But those are called generalized models, and generalized models have general intelligence, but there's also application-specific intelligence. So it's not going to know necessarily the vernacular or the information about local government. And so that requires specific data set, just like it might not know how to operate certain machinery or do very, very specific things. So those with specific data sets can make the generalized models better by tuning those models and creating specific applications for them.
So I guess tell me about your approach then on that. Where are you going with your particular tool and the nature of the data you're trying to expose, and how some of that, without obviously giving away the secret sauce, but how are you tuning?
Yeah, and actually we are fully transparent about it. I mean, the nice thing about Hamlet is public data is not copyrighted. So, or it's not, it is legal to use public data. That's all a matter of public record. So we don't run into the same problems that other AI companies run into, which is we've seen some interesting lawsuits, like Sarah Silverman sued OpenAI, and I don't know where that one is, but suggesting that some of the models may be trained on her information. We've seen some high profile authors. We use public data. So we are literally going to city government websites, going through the work of taking all those COVID era videos, processing those videos and transcribing them using AI and using that information to tune models. So our source substrate is public meetings, public agendas, staff reports. So, we don't need to get into the mechanics of what we do from there because, that's a little bit technical, but the source material is public information. No, nothing to hide there.
And when there's a domain of information, say local government, where the nature of that content, I mean, you go from one city to the next, they have staff reports, they have agendas, they have public comment periods, right? They have similar acronyms that they use across organizations. And these are all obviously things as a firm at Tripepi Smith we've become oriented to and familiar with, and our team at PublicCEO understands that's its own language model in some ways, right? Local government. I would imagine that that's part of the tuning that is to your advantage, and some of the work that you're doing is honing in around those nuances and either the language model or your layer coming in to better extract, understand, and put real context to it, so it's more accurate in its production or reproduction of facts and information.
Yeah, that's right. And so there we can leverage the advantage not only of the local, repository of information, but the knowledge of the generalized models. So we're able to basically augment the two, and that's the magic of what Hamlet does, is joining the public data set with the generalized information that's available through models like OpenAI's GPT-4, and the result is you get a very intelligent system on local government that has, by the way, and we'll get into this later, specific use cases. Like the AI cannot be a comms firm. The AI cannot be a journalist because you have to be on the ground to know what happens. The AI cannot be a environmental consultant necessarily, right? Because you might have to have relationships for those types of things. But it can be a powerful transparency tool. It can be a powerful data extraction tool. And so that's AI is not a replacement of jobs. AI is a replacement of certain tasks.
Yeah, I saw as a comms firm, obviously we're always intrigued by this, and when I've been to conferences, particularly I was at the California Association of Public Information Officers conference last year, and AI was a huge topic. There's no doubt there's some people that are nervous, like, what does this mean for my job? If my job is to write social media posts, or my job is to write content, my team, I'm sure that some of my team who will listen to this podcast have those same questions. What does that mean for the work? And I made one, I thought, thoughtful point, which is ultimately these large language models and the data they're going to rely upon, somebody needs to write that lore before they can actually absorb it. So somebody has to write that content, or at least speak it, in your case, to the extent you're taking content out of videoed meetings. So there's still a role to be the one who breaks that news or writes that original content to feed the AI machine. Second,
not only that, if I may interrupt
please.
You, the other thing that we actually use human editors as part of our process. So it's not a solve all, right? So there needs to be a person to validate this information. It's not 100% accurate, which, you know, we can get into to whatever level of depth you want and why it's not accurate. But the fact is, it's going to replace things that are repetitive tasks. So if you're in the business of doing the same thing over and over and over again, then yeah, you know, that's troublesome. But anything that requires some amount of original thought and relationships, it's not going to replace.
Yeah. My second comment I'll make along those lines too. Again, I share because it was one of the more compelling and pithy points I've heard so far about AI, which is your job is not going to be replaced by AI. You will be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI to do your job better.
Well put. You know, and people who are adopting the tools now, what they're seeing is they're looking at the day and saying, wow, not only can I do these 3 things, but I can do these other 4 things that I had no idea, you know, I didn't have time for, and now I have time for. This is awesome. And the people who are using it effectively are seeing it that way. And so I think it's actually going to end up with like being a massive productivity boost for the American economy. If we play it right and embrace it rather than kind of viewing it with this fearful, oh my God, it's going to take my job. And there is a bit of a panic around that. And I think that's, certainly some jobs will be replaced that are repetitive, automated jobs, data collection, it's like repetition, but many are.
So I guess we'll have to see if people take up sledgehammers and go to the NVIDIA factory and start smashing microchips in true Luddite style.
That's the Luddite story, right? The original Luddite story. That was what they did, right? Okay.
Yeah. Smashing the cotton gins. All right, so we talked a lot about AI, but let's try to get to the gist of it. For Hamlet, what does that mean? You're using AI, but what do you deliver for cities? Why are we talking to you, bringing you to the PublicCEO Report, talking to theoretically the city manager and local government community? What is Hamlet doing in the local government space to fulfill that mission?
So when we first started Hamlet, my thought was this would be a media company. Okay, and so the city council thing in Orinda, I started sharing to a small newsletter group of Orinda residents, hey, here is what's going on in the city budget. And I used GPT-3 at the time, and then I edited it myself, but it just made the process so much faster. And I think I had a couple hundred subscribers to my newsletter in Orinda. And I thought, you know what, I could do this for a bunch of cities, and it's pretty easy. But in the process of doing that, I mean, we've had BuzzFeed go bankrupt, I think, or I don't know if it's official yet. We've had Vice run into some troubles, and every local newspaper is dying. And I think, just to kind of tie the bow on media, it's very, very difficult right now to be in the media business. That's all I'll say. And there's just too many dynamics at play. But fortunately for us, we had 2 other parties interested in our public information processing. One was local government. And so our first customer was the city of Saratoga, California. What they saw in us was, well, hey, can you guys take our council meetings on an ongoing basis? We'd love to point our residents to a place that's authoritative and from the source, so that they don't necessarily get their information from social media like Nextdoor and Facebook. So that was like a clear and easy use case. Now we're 6 months into our relationship with Saratoga, and they're happy, and they link to us on their Saratoga City Council homepage, and you see a big H on there, and it's great. We have another local government, larger one in California, about to announce their partnership with us, which is awesome. However, our other customer type, we have private parties interested in this information too, namely real estate developers and government affairs departments. So real estate developers are interested in what's going on in planning commissions, unsurprisingly, and they pay us to extract, hey, what projects were discussed, who's applying for projects, what approvals were made on those projects. And we currently have now 6 real estate developer customers who are paying for this data as well. So our go-to-market is basically, we can help city managers with government transparency, and we can help private parties understand the dynamics of local government.
The output in Saratoga, that's like a summary, 500-word summary of what happened at the council meeting or planning commission meeting?
Yeah, it ends up being a little shorter. What we were able to do with them is Saratoga, James Lindsay, awesome city manager, Leslie Arroyo, really terrific to work with, the assistant city manager there. They created a template for us and said, hey, these are the basics and this is how it works. And can the AI kind of extract this information? The first couple of runs were, it took some work and some adjustment, but now for Saratoga, it's very easy for us to generate these summaries that extract the specific information, and they're accurate. It gets better with time is the thing. And so they provided us with these templates. Similarly, for our other government customer, we'll be doing the same thing.
Interesting. Well, I would just observe on the comm side, we certainly have a number of clients and other entities we follow where comm staff at city manager's office is working every week or every other week, depending upon the pacing of the council meetings, to summarize council actions. And I just know it's a tremendous amount of work. So the ability to kind of slim that down and that is a highly repeatable process, and to slim it down with AI, not only for the speed of production, but theoretically for the kind of absence of political unintentional bias, right? Like it's just data running through. So it's not trying to say this vote was good or bad. It's just like this vote took place and here's some information, and remove kind of a human perspective on that. I think is probably safer for folks in general and kind of a more honest way to portray some of the data. So I find that to be particularly interesting. And on the flip side, I would just observe we've had contracts in the past and currently do some of that work around agenda monitoring for certain issues of concern to private sector entities. So that's a labor of love on our side. It's a lot of labor work to get done. I well appreciate how the kind of aggregate summary data produced through AI would be highly beneficial to the nature of the customers that you're working on with right
One
now.
of our real estate developer customers said that they have poor analyst used to send this person to the meetings for 4 or 5 hours to wait for basically a couple of bits of information, and that was their job. And now they're able to do other things. In fact, they're the ones looking at our reports, the analyst, and now they're able to look at other cities and do other things. And it's great. I love that.
How do you, I guess, do you see a role? Because as you noted, you start out with newsletters and then morphed into this kind of more viable pathway, and credit for being an entrepreneur and flexing where the market goes. I can empathize with that running my own business, but how do you see some role for it to double back on being a source for journalism in the community? Or is it more, this is one of many ways that cities are effectively becoming their local newspapers because there is no local newspaper anymore?
I think that you're right on both counts. So the cities are going to provide better information to residents, which is the bet that we're making at Hamlet. I'm kind of frustrated with how there's been almost like a backlash against local government by residents, because I've seen now firsthand how hard local governments work to make cities great. But it's just, we're going to make it easier for these governments to communicate to their residents what's been going on. And really, I think it is because of 3 or 4 residents that are super active on Nextdoor and Facebook, and they only highlight the negative. And if you're a city manager listening to this, I've heard different terms for this. Local vocal is one I've heard often, and others. And they control the narrative, and please take back control of the narrative. So yes, cities are going to play a role in disseminating information, and they should. On the local journalism side, gosh, that's a tough one. Hamlet is not in the journalism business. My hope is, since we're not, that we get local residents who take the mantle. And I think there's going to be different funding models for this, but good residents who care about these things actually do investigative work, and not just surface level, kind of whatever. And I hope we find an alternative way to fund this type of journalism. But at the moment, ad-based journalism it's a failure, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about Hamlet you want to talk about around kind of service delivery you're doing and work? Otherwise, I might want to zoom back out a little bit and take advantage of you while I got you here for the conversation about AI tech and some other nuances around that you would encourage cities to think about.
We can keep going, and if we go back to Hamlet, great. But if you are a city manager and you're interested in disseminating information like Saratoga, of course we want to talk to you. I have to give that plug since I'm on the preeminent public government podcast. So with Ryder. So I have to take the opportunity to be a little bit self-promotional.
That's fair, fair and expected. All right, so let's go back. What are the I want to indulge you just from a technologist and a guy who's been involved in some of the bleeding edge stuff around AI technology and its deployment, and a Bay Area founder and CEO type. So I may wander into technical territory you aren't comfortable with, and you're certainly more than capable to say, try again, Ryder. What is, first of all, we hear a lot about open source AI versus like closed proprietary. Could you discuss the trade-offs of those two things and what that means?
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. So you're probably, if you're listening to this, most familiar with ChatGPT and OpenAI. I want you to go through a simple exercise if you have the time, which is ask ChatGPT in as many ways as you can what information it's trained on. And then you'll understand the definition of closed source. That is to say, you have no idea what it's trained on. Not only do you have no idea, it won't tell you. And you can ask it, are you trained on the New York Times? Are you trained on the Guardian? Are you trained on Fox? It will not tell you. And so that is the definition of a closed source model. We know that they're training the model on a bunch of trillions of parameters at this point, but we're never going to know. Open source, on the other hand, is literally as it sounds. You know exactly what it's trained on. Not only do you know exactly what it's trained on, but you have the ability to adjust it more easily to your liking. And so, Facebook, philosophically, there's different approaches here from the different companies. OpenAI is taking more of a closed approach, and Facebook is taking the open approach. Google is sort of splitting the difference, and they have open source models, but they also have their closed source Gemini model. So there's other kind of user trade-offs for using both. On the open source side, like these models can be run locally on your computer, so you actually don't even need an internet connection for many of the open source models. So people are afraid about, oh my gosh, like what data am I sending to OpenAI and things like that. And we can talk about that, but the open source models, many of them can be run locally on your machine without an internet connection. You literally just download this huge model, and it fits in a small size, and just try it that way.
Well, that was kind of, so where does Elon Musk Grok fit into that? I think it's called Grok. What is the name of his AI tool?
It's it's Grok, and I think I haven't been following Grok closely, but under a lot of pressure, because he is like very much a proponent of open source. I believe he released recently the kind of weights and biases, as they call them, for Grok, so you know what it's trained on. So he's I think allegedly, I think he's suing or sued OpenAI, and I think he was one of the founders of OpenAI, original backers, and he kind of I think joked in the lawsuit. In fact, I will drop the lawsuit if you change the name of OpenAI to closed AI or something like that, because that's his whole thing, is like,
right.
Hey, this thing was meant to be open source and open to the world, and you're not doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and it's been interesting to see the various outcomes of queries on the AI tool, right? So, and what I like in that too, as people experiment with, say, ChatGPT or whatnot, is they will, you can ask it a question, and depending upon who maybe the question's about, it might give you a very different answer that reveals some sort of bias that's built into the algorithm, or at least the data sources that you use to assemble a large language model. And I kind of liken that similar to potentially search results, right? Now, some search results seem to be more particularly biased towards certain outcomes than others. They don't have to be political necessarily, but it does just always raise the question, well, if I'm only as good as what the search results that you give me, what does that really mean, right? And that, of course, raises all sorts of other interesting questions around critical thinking skills and going beyond just AI to come up with your answers and trying to observe the world around you, not just rely on the text on the screen of what it's telling you is going on. So there's a number of things to play into that, but some of that fits right into the proprietary model questions and versus open source. And some of it just feeds into the broader concerns that you hear from various folks. And I certainly would join them on what does it ultimately mean for how we think critically and analyze data and come to understand the reality of the world if we're all querying ChatGPT to get our answers?
Yeah, no, it's scary. So a couple of thoughts there. So how these models work fundamentally is they're deterministic models, right? So this is to say, you know, the fox jumped over it guesses the next best word, essentially. And so This is how these models work, is they get, tens of, billions, hundreds of billions, trillions of parameters, and it's guessing what the next best word is based on its vast amounts of training data. And so, these models are going to get better and better and better over time, trained across more and more and more information. There is going to be an interesting point in time, and I don't know when this is going to happen, where there's going to be a shortage of text, original text for it to train on, which is it's going to get all of the data. And so then you have to start using a concept called synthetic data. And so it's really, really interesting, but I believe we're going to run out of text, original text, and because everybody's going to be using these AI tools in the not too distant future, which is scary.
Why would it need to continue absorbing text? Like at some point, if it's absorbed all the written text in the world, isn't that enough to train? How much more training does it need?
If just things change over time, specifically, I guess vernacular and how like slang and things like that, what is it going to do to, be up to date basically and remain culturally relevant? And so for that, you might end up being synthetic data.
All right, different question. A lot of city managers are trying to figure out how they get their foot into the water of AI and introduce it into their organizations. We've seen some cities adopt AI policies around use of AI and being cognizant of it as a tool that city staff may use and what the pros and cons are. Some of that's around the risk of sharing data information. Like if we're using this AI tool and upload a bunch of documents, are they going into the abyss and becoming part of the large language model at OpenAI or insert AI tool X? There's the obvious point that I'll make on your behalf is, of course, one way to stick your toe into the water with AI is to engage Hamlet to come provide analysis on your council meetings and planning commission meetings and generate summaries. Totally get that. That's an obvious one. But what are other ways that you've seen other cities contemplate how to get their toe into the water in AI or play with AI or whatnot? And I'll have a couple examples to supplement too after I let you take first mover advantage on that question.
Yeah, definitely. I think, first of all, don't deny the existence of AI. Like, let's just start there. I think that a lot of technology waves come and go, and I'm sure as a city manager, you probably have been pitched over the years on, hey, this is going to be the next thing. This is going to be the next thing. Of course, I'm the big, kind of AI guy, and I'm going to say it, but it's already here. So roughly half of the code on the internet is being written by AI. By some estimates, and you don't even need to Google far to see AI content, but half of the content on the internet is going to be written by AI inside of 2 years. Video, I don't know if you've seen the demos, but it's already here. So start by not denying its existence, and I would expand beyond ChatGPT. So like if I were in my office right now, ChatGPT is one tool. Try Anthropic, also free to try. Try Google Gemini. See what it has the ability to do. Upload a file of non-sensitive data that you can easily take, which you can do right now using Gemini, small Excel. Ask it to generate a graph from it. And you'll see the power of these tools. Don't stop at one prompt. So, I think people put one thing up there, and if they don't get what they want, they get angry. Tell it, you don't like what you got. This is how it should be improved. It is interactive. It'll listen to you and get better. So that's where I recommend you start. Familiarize yourself with the tools. Of course, Hamlet's a great way to start. It's like we're a pretty vanilla use case. We're not using any sensitive data. We recently joined the AI vendor registry that the city of San Jose, is spearheading along with a group of governments. And you can check our fact sheet, and we're not using any sensitive data of any sort. But beyond that, I've seen a lot of customer service use cases. I'll be honest, I don't think they're there yet. I think what ends up happening with customer service is you're catching a customer at their angriest possible moment, and the last thing that they want to do at that moment is chat with an AI about how they want to know what the ADU laws are. So I would wait a year or two on customer service if I'm being completely honest, but it is something that I'm seeing people at least try. Basic repetitive documents should be generated by AI. Anything that's like templatized documents should be produced by AI. Use AI plugins for meeting notes like Otter and others that are out there. Zoom has its own plugin. By all means, do that. Your city clerk will do the hard work of refining those templates, and your city clerk is actually going to end up getting a lot of scale out of AI. They're the most overworked person in the city probably. Now they have the ability to track multiple meetings this way. And so I would say, note taking, try the tools, and of course use Hamlet if you choose.
Yeah. I was sitting with this Steve Carmones, the city manager of Pico Rivera, and he whipped out his phone. He's got a very thoughtful kind of forward-thinking IT innovator on the team, and that person has been working on using the purchase premium version of ChatGPT, and had a little ChatGPT client on his phone that was plugging into the various policies and procedures for the city of Pico Rivera. And while it's a very simple example, it was awesome in that he just whipped out his phone, clicked on the prompt, typed in, or I guess he could theoretically even just hit the microphone button, ask the question, but said, what is the purchasing authority for the city manager in Pico Rivera? And it spit out the accurate answer within 3 seconds, right? And as small as that sounds, even internal to organizations, the ability to have a database of information about your organization that your staff can easily access and ramp up on history and background information on issues, so that you overcome those institutional memory gaps that get created when a longtime employee leaves or when you have turnover in positions, which certainly a lot of cities are facing these days, can be immensely powerful. And I would imagine to some extent, given the ability of Hamlet to go back in time, it also provides opportunities to, as you build up.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're headed. Is if we can do this successfully for a couple of years of data, well, guess what? We can successfully do it for 20 years of data. So imagine a future where city manager leaves alongside his or her departure. You're losing all of this institutional knowledge. Well, shoot, you need to know what happened to the emergency preparedness ordinance in like 5 years ago. And if that person is gone, like, who do you ask? And we can at least give you a starting point for that. We know many cities use Laserfiche to look at archives and things like that, but that's not going to accept natural language search. That's not going to tell you where to start. If you enter the right search terms, sure, you'll get it. Maybe you'll get all the results, but then you have to dig in. Yeah. Sometimes you need just an overview, and you need the ability to ask in a natural language way.
Yeah. I think that will be particularly powerful for organizations in terms of preserving institutional knowledge. But I was equally impressed. And at our firm, we have a knowledge base we've been building out to really harness up all the knowledge and experience of our team of nearly 60 people for all the work we do in the 200 plus agencies in California to make each of us better by getting that hive mind mentality of information. And but I have yet to layer AI in on top of that, right? And I could easily imagine when I have my comfort level figured out on where I'm going to what I view as proprietary information and park it into an AI system, that my staff's going to be able to ask those simple queries and get really helpful answers and context to questions about case studies and examples and graphic examples and things like that. So it's going to take time, but I have a real hope and vision for getting there.
And not to give you business advice, since you're a very successful businessman, but that is like exactly, I would say this to any private sector person watching this, which is if you're sitting on a proprietary data set right now, you are an AI company if you want to be. And that's the magic of this is augment that data with the large language models, and you have like a real big business that you are just sitting on. And that's where this is all headed. I'm very kind of positive sum about all of this. It's going to be, everybody should be an AI company, and it's going to be amazing for the American economy if we all head in this direction. And so we should. So if you're sitting on data, use it, monetize it.
That's interesting. I've not heard that perspective shared before, but I can easily see and appreciate it now that you express it that way. Yeah, that's good stuff. Sunil, you got anything else that you want to share with us today before we kind of put a bow on this conversation around AI, local government, and Hamlet?
I just view this as a very critical point for local governments, and I encourage everyone, kind of listening to this who's a city manager. This is the time now. I think there's this kind of moment that's going to happen where either, as you kind of alluded to earlier in the conversation, the people who use the AI tools will have a lot of leverage. The rest are going to be on the other side of it, and it's going to dictate sort of what happens. If you're listening to this, use the AI tools right now to your advantage. Get ahead of it. You'll remember this 2 years from now, 3 years from now, but it's happening faster than you think. So use the tools. We need American cities to be better. And AI is going to give you the opportunity to do a lot more with the same staff that you have.
All right. And finally, how do people want to get a hold of you, Sunil? How do they do that?
Easily at Sunil, SUNIL, at myhamlet.com. And you can also follow me on X at Subes01, SUBES01. That is not a professional account, but I tend to be fairly active on social media, so you might hear about a variety of subjects that are not necessarily applicable to you. But I like X. It's good.
All right. Well, I follow you on there, and you do have interesting things to say. So I encourage people to see what your thoughts and insights are across a range of technologies and their impact on society. And that's today's report. My thanks to Sunil for joining us. From the whole PublicCEO team and myself, Ryder, Todd Smith, thank you for your time.
We hope you learned something new and inspiring that will help you in your public service. Remember, PublicCEO has a daily newsletter that is free to those who sign up at PublicCEO.com. If you have feedback, questions, or guest suggestions for PublicCEO Report, please email editor@PublicCEO.com.